So I've now seen Netflix's live action Avatar show, and I can officially say I didn't hate it. I actually thought it was kind of fun. Now when I do say fun, I don't mean there isn't any flaws within here. There are definitely plenty of flaws within this show, but I think as an overall package there is slightly more positives than negatives to say about this show. For starters, they should have never talked about the changes ahead of the release of the show. After watching the show for myself, I think they should have just talked about their love for Avatar wanted to bring into the eyes of new viewers, rather than talking about all of the changes they're having within this show, seeping it into the OG viewers of Avatar's head that this is just going to be a complete mess. Basically, packaging this as Game of Thrones Light was a bad move. It set it up so a lot of the viewers of the OG series came into it negative and came out of the viewing experience still negative because their mind was already made up from the countless of interviews talking about the changes and how they were going to make Avatar better when there is nothing to really improve upon. I came into this with an open mind as how I normally come into these videos, which is why I always say the Netflix Death Note movie was not that bad, and I'm going to say it here as well. The Netflix Avatar show is not as bad as people are making it out to be. There are two portions that felt very one-to-one with the original series, and that's the beginning and end of the show. It began with us seeing Aang's backstory, him being told he was the Avatar and him saying that he doesn't want to be the Avatar, he wants to be a normal kid, but in this series, instead of running away, he went up for some fresh air and got swept up in a storm, and at the same time that happened, Sozin and his men arrived to kill off all of the air nomads. I do still stand by what I said in the video where I was talking about all the changes. One of the things said in those interviews was that they wanted to show more of the massacre of the air nomads and more of the Atnikai between Ozai and Zuko, but even after looking at the show, I do not think showing more detail of those events were necessary. Did I really have to see Sozin personally go to each individual air nomad and burn them alive? Not really. It doesn't add much more to the scene unless you were trying to show how monstrous the Fire Nation can be, but then the rest of the events that happen within this season contradict that. Episode 2 is probably the best episode of the series, the ones we all were worried about, the one that features Suki and the Kyoshi warriors, and honestly, I think they did them justice. This is the first live action re-edition of Suki and the Kyoshi warriors, and I really enjoyed what they had for us. I really love what they gave us with Suki and Sokka. Their chemistry was really strong, but this time instead of Sokka being like he was in the original show, this one was more placed into Suki's perspective. She's never seen the outside world, she's been kept hidden from the world, just training and being the best warrior that she can be, while at the same time having dreams and wonders of what the world is like and what it has to offer. And Sokka in this episode being that glimpse of the world, being that thing that, you know, that showed Suki, oh, the world is not all darkness and brim like the people have been telling me for this whole time. And you know, she actually still taught him to be more of a warrior. I was actually so surprised to see that. Again, I think the interviews did a disservice to this portion of the show. The big thing that came out from talking about this was that they got rid of some of Sokka's early assholery and sexism, which were things he had to grow out of to become a better warrior and leader. It doesn't feel like they removed it, it more feels like they toned it down and made it more subtle, but they definitely didn't turn it down when it came to the Northern Water Tribe and their stance on women and waterbending, which just makes me confused as to why they did it to Sokka then. Where the show loses me though is the whole middle portion of everything that happens from Omashu to all of the spirit world stuff. It's just weird in my opinion. I really hope you like Omashu and Jet and Teo and June and the Blue Spirit and Secret Tunnels and the episode where they help Heibai and the episode where Iroh gets captured by those soldiers and Zuko has to save him, and let me not forget Winter Solstice, because they're all jam-packed here within these middle portion episodes. So I really hope you enjoy those because they're going to be throwing them at you very quickly. I didn't know what to expect with the Omashu portions of the show because this is the first time Bumi would have been adapted to live action. The other one decided to skip it, but included Haru's story for some reason. They arrive in Omashu without a way to get in, and the Suave guy decides to help them sneak into Omashu. They didn't have to do the whole Pippin Padaloxocopolis bits, but it was referenced later by Sokka as a name to give to a doll to a girl for some reason. Once in Omashu, they notice this glider floating down to reveal that, uh-oh, it's Teo. At the same time, an explosion happens because it turns out there are Fire Nation spies here within Omashu. Jesus Christ, there's a lot of stuff going on here. They meet the father. Later that night, Katara stumbles upon the father meeting with Fire Nation spies, and a suave man, now called Jet, takes her to his hideout. They actually got rid of Jet super quickly. He didn't put up a fight at all when it came to Katara. She just froze him instantly. But I guess that's because they did get rid of a lot of Katara's early feminine traits they had within the show. She fell for Haru, she fell for Jet, and you know, they got rid of all of those like relationship type of stuff for Katara, and she is literally just the embodiment of hope within this show, as shown within Ember Island players. Also, now that I'm thinking about it, I do think they also got rid of Aang and Katara's relationship within the show, because there was no hints towards that within here. This feels super serious. They got rid of all the whole relationship stuff except when it comes to Sokka. It's so weird to me. Alone, I do like the Jet bits. I always think Jet is cool. Even in book 1, when I was a kid, I always thought Jet was cool. But things escalate because Jet plans to murder Teo's dad because he's working for the Fire Nation. Zuko and Iroh pop up to start a fight with Aang in a marketplace. Aang and Iroh get captured and imprisoned by Bumi. Sokka and Katara sneak in through the secret tunnels. And yes, the song guy was down there and he did sing the song, but the important part here was Bumi and Aang's conversation. I very much did not like Bumi in this show. Bumi as a character is a mad genius. He does goofy and weird things, but there was always a method to his madness. That's why Omashu was one of the last earthbending strongholds to fall. But in this one, Bumi gave up. He was pissed at Aang for being gone for 100 years and revealed himself immediately so he could do these sort of games with him and force him to make impossible choices by either killing him or sacrificing himself. I just don't like this Bumi. They took an actual interesting character and made him more into a senile and bitter old man. Bumi saw the importance of Aang having his friends by his side on this journey and knew when and where he should strike. But this one thinks Aang is in over his head and has no faith in him. Called him a cheater for getting help from Sokka and Katara. I just don't think this is Bumi. The Spirit World episode, which was aptly titled Spirited Away, also had a lot happening within it. After leaving Omashu, they noticed some scorched earth and decided to check it out, only to find a burnt forest with a village nearby where everybody in the village is afraid of the spirits around because they keep getting their men. If we look over at the original series, we see that Heibai did it because he was angry at the humans for destroying his forest, his sacred grounds, and it was Aang who showed him that acorn that Katara showed him earlier to let him know that everything will grow back and it'll be okay. They didn't do that. They started it. Katara did show him the acorn in the beginning, but things instantly changed. Aang moved over to the spirit world, and Sokka and Katara also were transported to the spirit world as well. What? This is already steering somewhere completely different from what we were shown in the original. Wan Shi Tong showed up, not in the library, in the spirit world, and helped guide the Avatar on the right path. Isn't he supposed to hate humans? Am I confused right now? What's going on here? Anyways, Heibai also appears, makes them straight off the path, sends them into the fog of lost souls, which we didn't know about until the Legend of Korra. They all have their battles with their past, which is a theme that's going on within this entire series. Everybody dealing with their past and traditions set in the past and everything about the past and how they can change the future by forgetting about the past and letting it go. Sokka and Katara get captured by Ko, the face stealer, and Aang was able to get out of there. He had to leave them unattended while he went to talk to Roku, and Roku was making jokes for some reason. He got captured by June, who was working for Zuko and Iroh. Zhao forced Zuko and Iroh to hand him over. He imprisoned Aang, and the Blue Spirit helped Aang escape. And we got the Blue Spirit episode, again, word for word, almost like beat by beat, the same thing that we've got in the movie, in the series. They're gonna keep showing us a Blue Spirit because it's just a perfect scene. You have to do no changes to this because it's a perfect scene. I find it very funny that no matter how many things they change in this adaptation and the previous live action adaptation version of Avatar, they always keep two things the same. The Blue Spirit episode in its entirety and Zuko's character. Those are always the highlights for me. That was one of the highlights in the original live action movie was Zuko's character. And this one isn't much different. I always found myself, especially in these middle portions, really into what Zuko and Iroh were going through rather than what Aang and friends were going through at the time. I think I called them Aang and Gang in the original video. But I don't know, maybe it's just something about seeing a guy want revenge, want to restore his honor, want to, win his father's love back that just resonates with me. I don't know, maybe I'm weird. Maybe I just like seeing somebody get stunned by Zhao and Zhao getting what's coming towards him at the end. I actually don't know. Going back to the interviews, one of the things that they said they wanted to do was bring more of Zuko's backstory into this season, and also introduce us to Ozai and Azula way earlier than we're supposed to see them, which I personally feel undermines Zuko and Zhao's power struggle, but it's fine. Ozai and Azula's characters feel like they got a big change from how they were written in the show, where Azula was always seen as the prim and proper favorite of the Fire Lord, cold and calculated, always one step ahead of the emotional Zuko, but here, she is still a prodigy, but they also gave her daddy issues? She's jealous that Zuko is the one that found the Avatar and Ozai is using that to his advantage, telling her she's not good enough. Zuko's the rightful heir. She could have finished her training a couple of moves earlier. She's so subpar. You could easily argue that that was always inferred in the background of the original series, but it still feels weird to me. Azula gets her cold and ravaging demeanor from Ozai, and Ozai is supposed to nourish that and put it in her mind that she should rule with fear and an iron fist, but it's not like that, I think. Also, May and Sally are already here with Azula, but I don't really mind that as much, especially since with her daddy issues, she needs people to vent about this with. The siege of the North mostly remained the same, surprisingly. They were still on the whole girls can't fight stuff, which led to a girl boss, girl power scene. Yui and Sokka still had their moment, but in this one, she was more of a girl boss than in the original. In the original, her story is finally getting the strength to make a choice for herself for once. She always had someone make a decision for her, whether it's the moon spirit giving her life or her father betrothing her to somebody. In this series, she's called off the arrangement the moment she became of age. She has snuck off to do stuff while she was supposed to be doing some of her princess studies. It lessens the sacrifice at the end where she's supposed to give her life to the moon spirit, if you ask me. Besides the bit ugly CGI mess of the raging ocean spirit possessed avatar, there was one thing that interests me that came out of the ending. When Zuko and Zhao had their fight, Zhao straight up tells Zuko that the avatar mission he was sent on was supposed to be a wild goose chase, and everything the Fire Lord is doing is to make Azula as strong as she can be. Ozai doesn't care about him, he never has, he never will. I'm curious what they will do with Zuko going forward and how much of that will change within book 2, because book 2 is going to happen. It'll be a nice setup for Zuko's metamorphosis season, but this time, will he choose to help Azula or help Katara this time around? But yeah, that's basically it. Some things I didn't mention yet were the costume and set designs, which I really did adore. It's like the one thing I adored in the other live action adaptation as well, but this one I think is slightly better, which makes it feel like the definitive live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. The choreography was good, the CGI was good, too bad depending on the scene you showed. I think some of the bad highlights that I can think of were Katara versus Paku. That just felt like a whole lot of CGI mess, and the big ugly CGI ocean spirit of wrath thing that happened at the end. I just don't think they can do that in live action shows. I really don't. I'd say the original animated series is still the preferred way to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender. Obviously, it just has a lot more going for it. It doesn't feel rushed in some places, and it doesn't feel all mushed together like the middle portion of this series does. It's still overall the best way to watch and appreciate Avatar, but this was fun for what it was as well.